Welcome to the Warrior Gamer Headquarters podcast. Lieutenant Colonel Ken Crigliano, your co-host.
Hi, my name is Kristin Anderson. I am one of the co-founders and CEO of FitGMR. And I was brought on to FitGMR really to help out on the business side of things. My background is primarily in finance and consulting. I spent a little over a decade in investment banking at JP Morgan, working on Wall Street. My specialty there was early on working with media telecom companies. I worked on the 3G, I'll be dating myself now, but I worked on the 3G auctions in Europe. I worked on the Telebras privatization in Brazil, built fiber optic, financings for fiber optic cable build outs and wireless telecom build outs. And actually, I was in New York on 9/11. And shortly after that, actually, even starting that day, I began developing a specialty in what was called industrials, but mostly in airlines and subsequently auto companies. So I spent about 4.5 years working with United Airlines, helping them navigate bankruptcy. At that time, I was working in restructuring and helping troubled companies or companies that had lost their way to rehabilitate them. And that was something that I really enjoyed because I felt like I was contributing. We were saving jobs. We were helping companies that otherwise might have been liquidated get back on their feet. And it was incredibly rewarding. During that time, JP Morgan also sponsored me to go to Columbia and get my MBA. So on top of working a lot of hours at the bank, I was also going to school every other weekend for a couple of years. And kind of in the early 2000s, 2006, 2007-ish, I got to a point where I was in my mid 30s and had spent, the better part of a decade working myself to the bone, helping with a lot of the things that we help with through FitGMR, but not eating well. I did manage to run a bunch of marathons during that time, which was probably not terrific. But I didn't eat well. I didn't sleep. I was riddled with anxiety and stress. And I just went into the person I was working with one day and said, I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, but I know that this is not for me anymore. And I took a year. I was fortunate to be able to do that and kind of really reassess my life and what I wanted out of it. And that led me into health and wellness. And in a way, it was to rehab myself, but that is another avenue when it comes to FitGMR that that really resonates with me in terms of I know what it's like to sit in front of a computer for hours and days on end and what that can do when your life gets really out of balance. And a lot of the tools that we provide through FitGMR are things that personally helped me in my journey. And there were times in my life when I felt like, God, I wish I had known this when I was 13 years old, because I would have been saved a lot of struggle. And it's really terrific to be able to bring that to younger, young adults, youth, and hope that they will start their lives out with more tools than I had. And so that's a little bit about me.
Right, I think Bilal, you probably want to take the first question here.
Do I want to take the first question? Yeah, so we're talking about, FitGMR. I think this is going to be the central point of this conversation, since I was looking at the website earlier and how so much of FitGMR aligns with what WarriorGMR is, aligns with, by extension, what our mission is. So I kind of want to know a little bit more about, what inspired you to kind of get involved with FitGMR and get it started? How did it start? How's it going? Just like the big picture of what happened to get this thing going.
Yeah, it happened very organically. It was something that I'd say really found our team rather than us necessarily looking to create it. Two of our co-founders had worked for Redbull High Performance. One, Dr. Holden McRae, ran the sports medicine department at Pepperdine for about 30 years. He's worked with special forces. He's worked with Olympic athletes. He worked with a variety of what they call alternative sports for Redbull. And in 2017, Redbull asked him, can you take everything that you know from traditional sport and translate it to eSport? We are now looking to build an eSports high performance program. How should we do that? And he spent, 9 to 10 months doing research on the various games, on retired athletes, current athletes, and developed what's at the core of FitGMR now, which is the 5 pillars of health, that in order to avoid the pitfalls associated, often associated with gaming, and to really optimize cognitive performance, you need to focus on physical maintenance, mental conditioning, nutrition, sleep, and lifestyle. And I have to say, in 2017, putting those 5 things together was rather unique. I feel like the world of health and wellness has really kind of championed that movement. But he, presented that to Redbull, and they said, great, how can you implement this with a team? We work with Cloud9 in LA. And he said, well, if you want someone to implement this, then you really should speak to one of my colleagues in the sports medicine department, Mike Anderson. He has a lot of experience working with special populations. And at the time, that's really how they looked at eSport athletes, was as a special population. And so our other co-founder, Mike Anderson, who also happens to be my husband, started working with Cloud9 around the beginning of 2018, just with their League of Legends team. And gradually over the next couple of years, what started off as a begrudgingly 1 day a week, activity, and implementing nutrition and, bringing in a mental conditioning coach, and emphasizing sleep and lifestyle, that then turned into a 5 day a week program. And the CEO of Cloud9 and co-founder Jack Etienne was a huge proponent of what we were doing. And that really, I think, helped with the success that, in 2018, 2019, this was not what many professional esports teams were doing. He was at the front of the curve there. And a couple years into it, recognizing the success, others in the industry started reaching out to Holden and Mike. What is the secret sauce? How are you getting these athletes to do this? Like, I could never get my team to do this. And they brought me in from a business perspective to say, hey, maybe there's a business here and a way for us to bring this to the rest of the community. And this was kind of mid 2020 during COVID. We sat in the backyard of the Cloud9 house with Jack Etienne and a pitch deck and said, hey, we think that what we're doing here is working and your players are doing phenomenally. We think we could bring this to others in the industry. How do you feel about that? It's kind of your program. It might be your competitive edge right now. And he said, oh my gosh, anything I can do to help this, please, I am 100% behind it. So we decided to build a mobile app, thinking that was something that would be the most accessible. We've certainly tried to make the mobile app that we've developed something that there are very few barriers to entry for people to be able to use it. We took the system that we had been doing for 2 years with Cloud9 and essentially put that system into the app. So 3 days a week, there's a workout that's designed for cognitive performance. 1 day a week, there's yoga. 1 day a week, there's meditation and a mental conditioning video that talks about, whether it's tilt management or setting goals or achieving excellence, experiencing failure, not getting along with your teammates, things that the mental conditioning coach at Cloud9 had worked through with the players there. On 1 day a week, we have nutrition content. Our nutrition pillar is centered around a low carb, healthy fat diet. We work with an organization called the Nutrition Network in South Africa. Our co-founder, Holden McRae, is South African. He studied with the person who founded this entity. There are nutritionists all around the world that specialize in the low carb, healthy fat diet, which is what we advocate for cognitive performance. And we have 1 day a week of go outside and play content, which is really the passion of our other co-founder, Mike Anderson, who I think still has like the Facebook go outside and play website. And we just try and share content that inspires gamers to find things to do away from the keyboard. And along with all of this rich content that's in the app, there are metrics to help our community develop new behaviors, new habits around this, because we recognize that many gamers who really excel in this in eSports have not necessarily played traditional sports, didn't grow up, with a health and wellness routine like this or any performance training. So we try and meet people where they are at, and we are mindful in everything we do of what the objective is, which is to optimize in-game performance. That when you do this, you will improve your game. And by the way, you'll also improve your life, but we come at it really from improve your game. And I know you only asked me to talk about how FitGMR got started, but I'll pause there because I could talk for an hour, I'm sure, about it.
Everything you said there is music to our ears, because what you essentially talked about is all the reasons why video gaming and esports is in fact comparable to traditional sports. There's been this long idea that these are separate entities, the video games, that they don't really do a whole lot for you. They're mostly unhealthy, and they have their downsides, but the plus sides are definitely worth looking into. And everything you said is strong evidence of that. And I especially like how you mentioned how a lot of these esports athletes, I mean, kind of true to the stereotype, they may not have had a traditional sports background. You see, when we, in our very early episodes, we talked about this. If you're growing up and you're, say, playing soccer, you have a coach, you have a uniform, you have a time that you have to be at the practice. But with esports, I could be playing in my pajamas at 2 a.m. with a bag of chips, right? So the same discipline may not be there. And so naturally, that's going to have its health consequences. And what you're doing is a very strong, powerful, and much needed intervention that allows these athletes to play at their highest level, engage them in the best mindset to promote high level functionality, and essentially turn them into superhumans. And this is amazing. Everything you're talking about is just phenomenal. I love it.
Well,
I know, Ken, you probably have something to say about it, right?
Well, I'm letting you guys get everything in before I come swooping down.
All right.
Go for
it. I was just going to say that you touch on an important part of actually our system, which is the coach. So in addition to the mobile app, we have a team dashboard, which is a web app, which allows coaches to track and monitor and encourage. There's a journal feature where players can put in feedback on how they're doing in the various metrics. A coach can respond back, can make suggestions. And that has proven to be a really valuable tool for the community. It gives a structure where there doesn't exist one currently. And it is another way of teaching. I think in even a few years, most gamers who are coming through this esports cycle will have had a coach at the way things are going. But for the community that we've been working with for the last 2 to 3 years, even just having a coach, being on a team, these are all things that are very new. Being accountable to someone, having someone else not only see what you're doing and participate in your journey, but being able to mentor you, having someone outside your family that you can lean on and say, things aren't going so well right now for me, and I need someone to talk to. I mean, that's some of the feedback that we've gotten, conversations that I've had because of the app, because of a player's entry day after day in their emotional reflection. How are you feeling today? And a coach saying, I've noticed you've been putting in these comments. Is there something that we should talk about? I mean, it really opens up so many doors. And people who are younger, who grew up in a traditional sports system and had that external mentor, that, built-in family of people that they might have gone through the years with, that's part of what we're providing in esports now that I think is life-changing.
I think that's fantastic. And if you see all the medals and accolades behind Ken, high performance, high endurance athlete, I think I was so excited for you to be here because what you're saying is exactly what we've been saying, and figuring out how to translate that is one of the things that I'm interested in. How do we one quantify the skills and competencies that we need to work on to improve our esports athletes? And then two, how do we make those skills and competencies transferable to their real life?
Yeah, I mean, I will say just first on to answer your question on how do we translate this for our community, I think it's very eye-opening. You know, we've been working now with Cloud9 and their various teams for 6 years. That's a long, that's a long time, and many different players that have come through the scene, and these are the best of the best. And to have players, for instance, come from Korea who have never done a workout before, have never been in a gym, and all of a sudden to see, Sven, leaning over and teaching someone how to use a rower, or working with someone on how to jump rope, to see the change in confidence that comes from these players from learning something new. I mean, MNS is one of the players who came from Korea, and at the beginning of the year was interviewed, and someone said, "So what do you like about the United States?" And his first response, "The workouts." It's like all of a sudden the gym that had never been maybe appropriate, or you don't need that, or that's not for your sport. Actually, it is. I belong here too. And players throw out, "Oh, I can do however many pull-ups and I can deadlift this." We aren't training these athletes to be able to run a 50-yard dash in a certain period of time or to deadlift a certain weight, but we are encouraging them to push themselves to their maximum and to do that in a safe way that does not compromise their game. But I think once people start to experience it, and once the world, I mean, we've spent the better part of the last 3 years just educating the ecosystem on why this matters. Because often at the beginning, people said, you work with esport athletes? Are you doing like finger exercises and wrist exercises? And it's like, no, we are working on their brain performance through their body. And once people in the community understand that, then I think being able to do that translation becomes easier. So to address your question on how do we quantify that? Well, you quantify that. I mean, we quantify it through our app. So in the app, you get a FitGMR score based on your, what you're putting in your metrics, the work that you're doing, the videos that you're watching, all of that education and habit development gets captured in the app. And I think being able to see that trajectory is important. Our app also works alongside wearables. So, we're picking up people's sleep, we're picking up their physical activity. And one of the ways that we are working on to get these metrics and this quantified snapshot of an esports athlete's health and well-being is by creating a ratings and ranking system that will also integrate their FitGMR score. Because, one of the members of our team was a part of the UCI esports program in 2016, 2017. He really helped shape that program, has won dozens of LAN titles in CSGO, can play basically every game out there at an incredible level. But as we talk about collegiate tournaments, even players have to have a certain GPA to compete. And if one of your players doesn't have that GPA, then you're disqualified. Well, what if every player also had to have a FitGMR score? And we hear from people, well, you could kind of dummy the data, or you could put in this. If you're going through and putting in your data, you're developing habits, because you are reflecting on your nutrition, your sleep, your state of mind, your what physical movement you're doing. So from our perspective, you're accomplishing what we hope to accomplish.
So
Amazing.
that's amazing. I mean, and everything you said is super, super close to home because I'm actually a 10 plus years League of Legends player. I follow the esports scene and watching Worlds right now. It's incredible. And you mentioned M&S. He recently left C9. I know, but he had quite a great run. And everything you mentioned about health and fitness reminded me like way back, if you remember Uzi, and I pulled up his article here. I mean, just unbelievable. The health complications. The man's body was just far older than what he is. And it says right here, with the sheer volume of players in China, it can create a situation in which players are replaced constantly and are unable to return to one of the new professional spots provided in the LPL, that is the Chinese League of Legends League. The industry is also quite young in nature, so there's not much understanding by medical practitioners. Again, this is really highlighting the need. We saw this early on and we thought, oh my gosh, this is a big issue. No, this is happening all the time. And so all these interventions and everything we're talking about is highly relevant to the health of our gamers. And also just to add, the fact that games are played by about 3 billion people worldwide, this isn't a small thing. So this is definitely something that we need to get the message out there. And the fact that we have organizations like FitGMR that are doing that. And also you mentioned UC Irvine. My brother actually went to UC Irvine. I went to UC Riverside, and I did play for a collegiate team in Overwatch for a little bit. We had to maintain a certain GPA. We had to show up to practices. And so all this stuff is really, really, really close to home for me. So I'm super hyped that you're mentioning all these things.
Yeah, and I think,
no,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to say, with Uzi, I think there's so much of the physical health, diabetes, obesity, and things that he struggled with. And he does mention also the mental health, but I mean, that's one of the byproducts that really inspires us at FitGMR is, yes. So Fudge would be okay with me sharing this. Fudge has lost 100 pounds in the last probably year and a half, or I mean, we've been working with him now for 3 to 4 years. He's been with Cloud9. And, there are other players on the team that have also really just experienced physical transformations. That is not what they focus on. When you ask them, what has FitGMR done for you? That is not the first thing that rolls off their tongue. The first thing is for Fudge, and we have a video on our YouTube channel where we interview him. He says, well, I realized that I used to be kind of depressed and I had terrible social anxiety. And there's a direct correlation with once I started working out, those things just went away. Those were his words. And confidence, that's something else that comes up with players that use our system is I became more confident outside the game. And because I was more confident outside the game, I became more confident inside the game. Hadi, one of the Overwatch players that had played for London Spitfire, who we worked with during COVID remotely. And then, that team kind of got blown up, and he just kept with the app on his own, just doing the app, sticking with it on his own. And then when Jack Etienne went to put a new team together, Hadi was the one player that got brought back. He also ended up winning the 2022 Hawelka Award. And he said, he loved meditation. I love the yoga and meditation. We brought our teacher to the house one day, and it was as if he was seeing a movie star. Peter, oh my gosh, Peter, you're here in person. And he said, I used to always second guess myself, and I don't second guess myself anymore. I have so much better mental clarity. I'm making better decisions. Those are all really important things for an esport athletes to have that mental clarity, to not spend those 2 seconds second guessing a decision, but actually, knowing where you want to go in the moment. So I think the mental health side of things is really important, and it is a positive byproduct of all of the different components of FitGMR, and that changes the world. That changes lives, and that changes the world, because that changes how people interact with each other, how people communicate, how people feel about themselves. And So a lot of good stuff.
And then also what you're doing, and you're working with players like Fudge. I mean, that's the Fudge factor going up when he's feeling really good. And what's interesting about that is Fudge, he has influence. And so too do all of these esports players, right? And so when they are meditating, following their diet, when they're losing 4 or 5 games in a row and say, you know what, I just need to take a break, rather than get angry at their teammates and just keep tilt queuing, these are behaviors that directly influence how the gaming community acts as large. Compare, and I don't want to speak ill of him, but Tyler won in his early days. I mean, he's still pretty furious, but I mean, in his early days, it was particularly bad, and people were influenced by his, oh, let's just run it down and see what happens. But when you have players who are getting involved in these wellness activities and finding their physical health, mental health, and all these things, like, you see a big difference. Kind of on a similar vein, there's another podcast. If you've heard of the Broken by Concept podcast by any chance, it might be familiar to you. Maybe.
Yes, yes. I think
yes?
there was just someone at an event that we were at over the weekend, actually.
Wait, really? Okay. So this is interesting because their podcast was actually the inspiration for this one, funny enough. And it's led by Coach Curtis and Nathan Mott. It is a League of Legends podcast, a solo queue podcast, and they talk about all the things that we talk about, all the things that you talk about, and they have a bigger reach. And what you're seeing now is this overwhelming transformation within the League of Legends community, which is extending to other games, which is extending to life. I've even used these values to help myself study in my medical education, and it's just amazing. And this is why we do this podcast. It's really just to share that gaming can be used as a tool for self-improvement. Despite what people say, it really can. It can create a better you, can create a superhuman, but it needs to be done in the...
Yeah, I think one of the things when it comes to Fudge, and this I think highlights the importance of having the entire ecosystem really support this movement, is we, at the end of the last off season, we interviewed Jack and Fudge, just like, so what's happening? Tell us about like the new team dynamics, etc. And Fudge just randomly said, well, 2 weeks ago or a week ago, Jack messaged me at night and said, you better be at the 10 a.m. workout tomorrow morning. And he said, I had turned into a complete degenerate in the off season. Wasn't working out. I was staying up late. I wasn't eating well. And so Jack said, you better be at the workout tomorrow morning. And so I came, and now it's been a week, and I love my life. I love my teammates. But he also needed someone there, like, championing him. And I think it is an important part of the system that the whole community has to kind of support this movement, and the fact that it isn't always what you want to do every day. I mean, even for probably all of us, like, there are certain days when you don't feel like going for a run, or you don't feel like doing yoga or sitting quietly. I mean, Fudge meditates for 20 minutes every morning and every night. But that is the discipline that sets, excellence. That's what creates that top 1%, is that sort of discipline. So
that's a good segue for Ken.
Mr. Elite Athlete, Mr.
Elite,
I have 25
Mr.
axes
Discipline.
on the wall, wakes up at 4:30 in the morning and does
Every
like planche
day.
push-ups.
Yes.
Yeah, this guy. What do you got to say, Ken?
Welcome.
Thank you. I think this is 100%, 10 times as quiet as I ever been. But it's because I didn't want to guide this from my perspective, and I love everything that we've talked about. And if you are bored and you have time to watch some of our previous episodes, it is like you have sprinkled pixie dust upon all 29 of them, because we do talk about this, and it's so big to explain to the industry, not just the esports industry, which is huge, but all the other industries out there, the benefit of gaming and the benefit of participating in esports, and the necessity of being in the industry, right? And so I love the fact that you talked about coaching, because one of the things that elite folks know when they're raising their kids or when they're influencing others is the absolute necessity of having a coach, which is required to be successful. I don't care where you've been in your life, or where you're at in your life as far as the industry. If you're an executive or you're accomplished, you know the necessity of having coaching. And it's really cool to see that in esports, because I'm willing to bet like what? Like, okay, I just want someone to show me how to play the game better. I'm going to go on YouTube. I'm going to watch good people. I'm going to emulate them. It's not going to work. Right. Like, so I love that. The fact with coaches, and I would like your perspective on this. First, just real quick, do you consider yourself like one of the coaches? Like in that role?
I am not, I don't know. Elaborate
Okay.
on what you mean on as what kind of a coach?
Sure. So say you have someone like Fudge, or someone who's attempting to be beyond top 10% in the field, right? Are you engaged personally for that person to ensure the guidance that they become excellent in whatever it is they're trying to do?
So I personally, I am not that person for our company. We do have other people who are kind of doing the day-to-day coaching, but we also have because of our relationship with Cloud9, when we were starting FitGMR, they were starting the Cloud9 training grounds, which was their youth development arm, which was really all about coaching teams, because they recognized that in the marketplace there were one-on-one coaches that people could work with, but no one was developing a team mentality. And so the training grounds trained 150 coaches to go out into the world to train teams in high schools and colleges and middle schools. And a year and a half or so into that, mid 2022, Jack kind of reassessed and said, listen, we need to focus on our professional teams, and that needs to be our focus. But we think this business actually fits within FitGMR. And so we took over the Cloud9 training grounds in August of 2022 and have been training coaches, training kids in the game, but also then we have the opportunity to integrate the health and well-being, which is really an important step in educating the why this needs to happen. Is if the coaches don't understand it themselves, or if the coaches have come through as historical gamers who never paid attention to any of this stuff, how are they going to lead a team of kids in this way of life? It's not like soccer, where a typical soccer coach has played soccer themselves since they were 5 years old, and so they understand the protocols. But we actually have a coach development program that we just launched last month with 24 participants from around the world, from Colombia, from Nepal, from Ghana. And this isn't learn how to be take your after school program to be a coach. This is how do you become a coach of a high performing team? And how do you integrate all of this, the FitGMR 5 pillars of health and performance training into your schedule and make that a really cohesive system? So we've leaned very heavily into coaching and coach development, and using kind of that coaching program as a way to help foster the integration of health and well-being into the greater system. But I personally am not one of those coaches.
Yeah,
I like to think I'm a coach in other ways in the business. And I also have coaches myself that, that I look to for help and advice and guidance. So I just want to emphasize what you're saying, that like, it's important to have other people in your circle to help.
Yeah, it's a huge difference to see people who have been coached, and it's actually really easy to guess, because the folks who've been coached, and I'm not talking high school, right? That's not coaching, it's basically being taught, right? And so there's a big difference between a teacher and a coach and a mentor. And the folks who have been coached by a coach who wants to win are self-aware, they're less intimidated by their shortcomings, right? They have far less low self-esteem, they have high self-esteem, and they also are not perfectionists. And perfectionists are low self-esteem people too. particularly probably avoidant personality disorders and everything. But the benefit that you're giving this industry is you're professionalizing this industry with people who can succeed in any scenario because they're what's called calibrated, right? And you might know this psychological term called calibration, which is knowing where you are in the performance, right? Like I show up to a race, like this weekend, it was a national championship. I look to my left, I look to my right. I pretty much know the placings, right? I know where I'm going to be at. And so folks who get coached are more self-aware of that and become better people in the industry. And I love that you're hitting on this coaching aspect, and 150 coaches is incredible. I mean, that's amazing, and so what you're doing is changing, I guess, ironing the kinks out of an entire industry. That's pretty cool.
We are really trying to do that, exactly what you just described. And we look at it as professionalizing the industry, as legitimizing the industry, as garnering respect for the industry, helping people to take it more seriously. And ultimately, from a business perspective, this needs to happen for the industry to become more profitable and to survive. These things have a lot of ramifications. So we do have a multifaceted approach that we feel like we've partnered with Dr. Brett Shelton from Boise State, and he is our kind of career development arm. So he's developed a certificate program that he's been teaching at Boise State. It's a 12-credit course in eSports management certificate program. He's also now just adapted that for dual credit for high school students in Idaho and Washington. But that his curriculum is now also a part of our, what we call our academy system. So we have the performance training, the health and well-being, we have the coach development, we have the in-game training, because we have curriculum in a half a dozen games that we're constantly updating that our coaches use to train teams. So we aren't big on the, here's a bunch of videos, if you want to watch this, like download this video and watch it and you'll learn how to IGL or you'll learn this skill. We really believe in the, we teach this cohort. It's taught like a business school class for our coach development program in person with lots of homework, but everything is in person. So we have the in-game training for the players. We have the coach training for the coaches. We have career development, which is an important component for younger athletes coming through the system who won't make it to the professional level, but who want to learn more about the industry and to see where they might fit in. And we have the performance training. That is what you need. And we're working with, the Indian Esports Federation, Colombia, Ghana, Malaysia, and really trying to bring this to the world so that the standard of excellence just gets higher.
So for your business model, for your Leslie was at our school. I'm at Illinois Tech. And
Okay.
Since you're in charge of the business model, how can we help you get your word out? Your customers are, I know, like Doc Haskell at Boise. I imagine your customers are universities. Your customers are also individuals buying your app. Who are your customers and how can we help you? Because you are singing, I think the guys will agree with me, you are right in line with everything that we've been talking about for the past 29 episodes.
Well, just this in and of itself, inviting me to participate in this podcast, that is helping get the word out. We really, as a company, you kind of hit the nail on the head with what our revenue streams are in terms of the FitGMR app. We have a team dashboard that is used for colleges and high school programs. And we have now a license that we're basically licensing our academy to organizations abroad, whether they're federations or private companies that, don't have 3 years to develop all of this IP themselves. Like they want to just be able to hit the go button. But we have not spent any money advertising to date. So everything that we've been doing has been word of mouth. It's been us showing up places ourselves, just getting the word out and finding partners like you who are looking to help shine a light on this. And So anything that you can do to help us shine a light will be of great assistance.
We intend to do that. You know, I like to pull on that thread of the legitimizing the industry comment, because this is something I do very often. If you look at, you know, the generation 50s, 60s, and 70s, they're still pretty much in 80s, are still pretty much leading, you know, these Fortune 500-ish, you know, government institutions. And so they didn't grow up in a digital environment. Even me, even you, I would think that you're a digital, you know, child. And so the problem with like explaining these folks is, you know, how I view it is airplanes were laughed at, right? Vehicles were laughed at. The internet was viewed with heavy skepticism. I'm like, what is this? What is this going to do? But then you got cell phones and you got all these other technologies that, yeah, you don't have to participate in the esports industry. You can right now go on as you are, merrily way. But the problem is every day that you're not in is 10 days of catch up. And I will tell you that it will be impossible after a certain point in time to catch up. You will be left behind, because esports and gaming is like a foundation that's being poured underneath the foundation of our entire culture. And everything will be gamified. I cannot tell you every place. I mean, I'm sure you did this as a consultant, but you have to gamify. Like, you got to get people measured against themselves. You have to show them how they're progressing. You have to give them constant feedback. You know, every app is becoming like a coaching kind of app. And if you're not familiar with that, whatever industry you are, I don't care if you're Warren Buffett, like you're going to be left behind, right? And I'm interested in your impact on the industry. You're talking to executives and how you kind of convey the urgency, like, don't be digital photography, right? Like, you got to participate, right? I'm very interested in your experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I love those conversations because I love watching the light bulb go off in people's heads when they're like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea." You're like, "Yeah, this has been happening for years and you had no idea, but you have to have an idea now." And so I really enjoy those because I feel like I get to enlighten people and share something that I know that others really don't know anything about. An anecdote came to mind when you were saying that. One of our investors, and again, this person would be okay with me sharing this, was someone that I worked for at JP Morgan for a number of years, who then was tagged by Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, because I worked in the restructuring group during the financial crisis in 2008, he tagged her to take over as the treasurer of JP Morgan because JP Morgan itself, the financial industry, was in a crisis. So who do you go to? You go to your best crisis person. And she is now one of our investors. But as I was, you know, explaining this to her, after we hung up, I said, "I'm going to send you something." And I sent her an audio clip of the Cloud9 League of Legends players communicating during one of their matches. And I said, "This will give you an idea of the intellect of our community. Try and follow their comms, their communication in game."
I'm dying right now.
Think about the speed of their brain and what they are doing while they're communicating and playing their game and keeping track of an entire map.
Yeah, it's so fun. April, I mean, how many times have we talked about this exact moment? And I'm right now on a side gig trying to convince the Department of Defense to institute esports in the actual life cycle of a military member, because we go, hey, did you get your mentoring in? Right? Do you have a mentor? Are you mentoring? Did you do your PT today? It should be third question. Have you gamed? Right? Like, we should have DoD partnered games. I played Civilization, SimCity, Age of Empires, and I cannot tell you when hits the roof and Crisis goes down, I'm the dude in the room, right? Because I can take 90 different things, fuse them together, and figure out what's going on. So I cannot agree with you more on that aspect. I'm sure April has plenty
Oh my
to
gosh,
comment.
yes. I love that you're saying. I'm just giddy over here. I'm so the speed at which they communicate, the the efficiency at which they communicate, the ability to say things succinctly and just know where they're at on that map. And if they're streaming on Twitch at the same time, they're also paying attention to a whole audience on the side if they're not in immediate competition. It's phenomenal. That's why I was trying to hit at on, like, what competencies do you track? I know confidence is built. I know communication is built. I know decision, the ability to overcome trauma, the ability to focus. There's so many things that are developed as these elite players are playing. And that's what I was telling Ken and Bilal that I'm looking for right now. I'm working on my PhD right now and looking at which particular competencies and skills are best developed and how are they transferable to their next phase of life. Like Ken said, in the military, those guys who can play 8 hours can also stay up all night and be focused and do those missions that require focus for 8 hours. There's so much that translates to the real world that I would love to hear more about what you've learned on that aspect.
Just in terms of how this translates to the real world. Yeah, I mean, I look at it in part through a traditional sport lens and, the analogy of traditional sport to esport and, something as simple as learning how to win and lose gracefully. That is something that kids who play traditional sports learn at a very young age. Nope, you're not allowed to stomp your foot on the field. And yes, you have to shake everyone's hand and say good game. And no, you can't say GG. You have to look them in the eye and you have to say good game. And for kids who are playing video games who maybe didn't play traditional sport and now all of a sudden are expected to perform in a way with their team, represent their school, represent a professional organization. And that's something in and of itself, that emotional regulation that is how you handle difficult situations in life, which we all handle all the time. And there are tools and coaching that helps people learn how to do that the right way rather than letting their emotions get the better of them. So that's one thing that I think is very that we have seen. Yeah, I mean, I just think generally when you are working with someone and saying, this is what we expect of you, and in order to be on our team, we're going to hold you accountable. That's a job. That's teaching people how to be in any job and have a boss who's going to say, this is what I'm going to expect of you on a day-to-day basis. And there's discipline, there's accountability, there's follow through, there's respect. I mean, this is what we call our foundation of character. We have the 5 pillars of health, and then we have a foundation of character. It's respect for yourself and others. So those are the things that I think are maybe more of the soft skills that translate into life, but I'm sure there are the quantifiable, response times and decision making, critical thinking that can be picked up through in-game stats.
Thank you so much. Gaming, and I don't mean to say the real world is not gaming. Gaming is
Yes,
as real
no,
as it gets.
sorry. Yes.
That was my fault. It's even realer than it gets. And I think the stats, that Cloud9 also was one of the pioneers working with Azure and really taking business intelligence to track their stats to the next level. So that's what we always teach, that esports gives people a reason to use the AI and use the business intelligence tools and track really tiny measures and identify which levers they need to pull to eke that tiny bit of more performance out of what they're doing. So I think it's just phenomenal what you're doing, and I think it translates very well to Ken's philosophy and Bilal's philosophy of just get better. James Clear, Atomic Habits, get 1% better each day. Just, you're either getting worse or better. Just do what it takes to get better. And apps like the one you put together give people a roadmap that you can hardly fail on for just getting better.
Well, it's funny you say that, because we had someone join our team and they said, we had a call with Jack early on, Etienne, and this person said, so Jack, if you were to pick up the phone and call another team owner, what would you say about FitGMR? And he thought for a moment and he said, I would say that FitGMR will make you physically stronger, mentally sharper, and generally better at anything you strive to do. And who doesn't want to be better? So that became our mantra right there. And it is true. So from the top.
From Jack Etienne himself. Whew, that's amazing.
All right, so we'll wrap up a few more questions here, I think, for the team before we head out. So my question usually to all our guests, and April's probably know what's coming down the line here, is so you have an impressive resume. You've done a lot of very impactful, high-level stuff, and you're here with gamers, whipping them in shape, showing them how to succeed in any endeavor that they attempt, and to convince them they should attempt endeavors that are difficult and hard because it leads to a life of fulfillment, right? What is your personal equity in this? And what is it that you bring to the table that just energizes the entire organization and converts these people over, transforms these people? I'm very interested in why you chose this, your energy behind it, and then if you have some time, where you're taking it.
The energy behind it is very simple. I look at our company as being able to change the world through gaming. And we are changing people's perception of themselves. We are making people aware that they can do anything. We're changing how people communicate with others. And at the end of the day, I really hope that we reverse some of the trends in chronic disease. So at the heart of FitGMR is a desire to reverse obesity, diabetes, and mental health conditions, because there's just no reason for what we know scientifically for our world to be struggling with those things. Something is wrong. So how do we fix that? And I just feel very strongly about that. And it's very easy to become passionate about this when you see players. And we had a dad call us on info at FitGMR. He didn't call, he reached out on info at FitGMR with a long paragraph that said, my son is a junior in high school. He's brilliant. He's getting C's in school. He stays up all night playing League of Legends and falls asleep in his classes. I love my son. I don't know what to do. I'm trying to learn what League of Legends is. Someone said I should reach out to you. What should I do? Blanket question. What should I do? And we got on the phone with this dad. We shared with him the app. We told him about FitGMR. And he said, okay, I mean, my son doesn't exercise. He's not going to do this. And I said, okay, let's get him on the phone too. And so we set up another call for a week later. It was over this past summer, and his son joined. And we talked to him and we said, there's so much that you can do, but you can't do it if you don't sleep. You can't do it if you're poisoning your body. You need to focus on your education. You can play, but there has to be some balance. And we had a great talk, and his dad texted us later and said, what you just did made Ryan feel validated in a way that he has never experienced in his life, because it was my husband and I. And he said, you are two people who have really nothing to gain by talking to him. And you just have probably changed the trajectory of his life. And so we said, okay, so spend the next 30 days in the app. If you do that, we're going to get you tickets to a Cloud9 League of Legends game. And so he did. And his dad said, I will buy the tickets. I will get us a hotel. He said, this is amazing. Well, so we told Jack he was coming. And you know what? Jack and the entire team stood around afterwards outside Riot Studios and talked with this young man for about 20 minutes. He got to ask them questions. The dad said he fell asleep in the car on the way back to the hotel. He was so exhausted. It was such like an energizing experience for him that he crashed. And we just talked to this dad, literally this past week. His son I said, okay, well, the next thing you have to do is you need to start an eSports program so that he and his friends, and you know what? That's going to change what he's doing, because now you're actually giving him a path forward. He's going to develop skills by doing that he can take to college that will help him get into college. So he reached out and said, so Ryan started an eSports program. He had 93 kids sign up. He couldn't believe it.
Oh,
this is
wow.
in Northern California.
Oh,
and
amazing.
now he complains because he has to organize the teams and he has to manage things. But I know he's just complaining, but I know and so we talked to him and we said, that's great. Now he has to host an event at the end of the year. That's his next homework assignment. There are other teams that we work with, other high schools. We're going to introduce you to those other high schools, and he's going to put together a tournament. And so he has just become, I said, and help him to raise money, like, help him develop. This is now him becoming an entrepreneur. And he wants to go to UC Irvine. He wants to play League of Legends at UC Irvine. We have someone on our team who played at UC Irvine. Let's get him to talk to him. I don't know. I mean, you do those things and you just feel good. I worked in a job where I helped companies. Like, that's what I chose to do. That was the group that resonated with me. And now I actually get to really help humans. I mean, I was inadvertently helping, but now I'm really directly helping. And that is what's in it for me.
That is the most heartwarming story I've heard
Fantastic.
in a long time. Really. That is
I-
amazing.
It's so true. And that's why I do what I do too. I took a group. Riot's been fantastic. I was able to, with my friend Kevin Fair's help, we were able to take a group to the LCS when they were in Chicago last year. And our kids got to, walk on the stage. But what you said is just watching their excitement when they meet the pros and watching their joy when they look at what Riot's doing and realize, oh, there's a guy who gets paid to make sure the lighting works like this. There's a guy who laid the networking. There's a guy who like all the jobs around esports. Trips like that Riot it makes possible helps you really tell that story to parents that, your kids who are gaming, that kid you just mentioned probably never would have organized a 100-person event before in his life, but you gave him that confidence to do it. And I think that's what's really thrilling, is watching kids rise to the occasion because they want a game, rise to the occasion to make it happen and do all the steps around it that you need to do to raise money to upgrade the computers, to argue with the network folks at the university. That's fantastic. That's the best story I've heard too, Bilal.
Mhm.
So what's really cool is on episode 28, we had Kyrie J, and she was on, and that's just been 2 weeks, I think, Bilal. And in 2 weeks, she's on our board, and we're creating an AI that is replicating her intervention, because she intervenes in stress, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, has saved lives personally. We're trying to capture that in an AI system. And it looks as though we could have some synergy here, because you're doing something similar, but getting folks who are like kind of in the center, who are maybe inertia might be a word that, someone would use, that just get them a little more momentum or movement in the physical fitness, mental fitness, spiritual performance. And then we had episode 13 with Drew Schwartz from the Cleveland Clinic. April, if you remember that, doctor up there working with people's ergonomics and making sure their seats are arranged and everything. So that's a pretty good resource. And then episode 10 with Danny Martin, who's creating this eSports pipeline, right? Which is really cool. So having all of you together is just it seems like we're putting ourselves kind of like right in the center of legitimizing this entire industry with all these folks doing amazing things. So what is it coming down the line? And you don't, have to answer if it's top secret, obviously, but what can we expect or hope from FitGMR over the next maybe 18 to 36 months until we have you back on the show?
Well, when we met with the head of the eSports Federation of India about a year ago this time, we were sitting talking and he was nodding and he just looked at us and he said, the name of your company is genius. FitGMR. FitGMR. He said, I can go to my government and I can say, FitGMR, we are going to make gamers fit. See? This isn't kids sitting on the couch playing video games. This is FitGMR. And so our goal over the next, 18 to 36 months is to create a world of fit gamers. And, we are just working day by day to get our technology embedded in the ecosystem so that when you look at the leaderboard in our app, Amon Green, who is like, really competitive, is usually at the top of the leaderboard, but he sometimes finds his way down to second or third place. But I want hopefully we will have a leaderboard of fit gamers around the world who are competing for that top spot.
I'm joining right now, so you better watch out.
Yeah.
You're gunning
We're
for
making it
number
over
one,
there.
right?
Okay, watch out. I'm going to tell Mike and Amon that they better watch out because it is coming for them.
And
Yes.
I want you at IIT too. Now I'm gunning for Boise because I love Doc Haskell and his program. So I'm going to call you back and figure out how we can
Great.
help.
Yeah, well, we did just announce a partnership with the NECC. So all of the colleges and universities in the NECC now are given access to the FitGMR app and team dashboard. And, it's something that Jacob Van Ryan has said, this is something that will soon be a requirement to be part of his conference, that your program has to be a part of FitGMR. So happy
That's
to
fantastic. Congratulations.
support IIT, especially since I grew up in Chicago. So
Yay. And Leslie's right around the corner too. She's wonderful.
So, I'm curious. My best bud was on the President's Physical Fitness Council, and I'm like, the name has physical fitness in there, but there are a few of these national organizations, but there's no federal advisory committee for esports that I know of. And I just asked Bard, who's AI, should know everything, and Bard says there's no federal advisory committee for esports. So I'm curious if I see this little smirk going on here. So I'm kind of curious if you have the federal government in your crosshairs at any point in time.
I don't know necessarily what you mean by in our crosshairs, but I will say that we definitely see an opportunity to work with the government, in that, especially given the metrics that we track and the other companies that we partner with on biometrics and pupillometry, and being able to have, measurable statistics on pupil size and what that translates into in terms of an optimal game role and heart rate during matches. And we do think that there's a lot that the government might be not necessarily interested in, but we could be helping to shape gaming to the military as a natural, I think, flow, especially in certain branches. And if we can, when we first started, we really likened esports athletes to fighter pilots and Formula One race car drivers. Well, there's a reason for that. So if we can develop talent for the military in the same way that we develop talent for corporations, cognitive performers, cognitive performance, tell them we'd love to talk.
I certainly will. And I might even connect you with the Or Systems team who's making episode 26, who's making the With Them Frontlines game to incorporate biometrics in the actual response in the game, which is really cool. So yeah, and I think we'll give you back some of your time. This is a long show. We'll give you back some of your time, but I'm curious to know perhaps if you can talk about some of the games that you actually, if someone comes in, they're like, hey, I want to start esports and I want to kind of check all the boxes, I just want to develop my entire brain and body. And do you have kind of like a list of, shorthand list of games that, you're like, yeah, these are like really great to experience?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think really any game can elevate someone's mental acuity. I mean, it depends on what people are looking to develop. I will say that for FitGMR, we provide coaching. If someone were to come to me for how can you help me level up in a game? We have coaching in all of the kind of primary Valorant, League of Legends, Overwatch for, I don't know, the life of Overwatch. And we're now also starting to train in mobile games. So meeting the demand that we're getting from overseas. One of our coaches actually coached the national Indian League of Legends team in the Asian Games to a 5th place out of 19 finish. But yeah, I think different personality types, different games resonate with different people. I think it's important to let people kind of explore on their own. Not everyone who plays League of Legends would be drawn to CSGO. I mean,
so I think there's a big market for like I have kids, right? And I want to guide their mental development using games. And then I have a father, right? And so it's actually been very challenging for me to go, okay, what do I pick for my 6-year-old? And like I've had to game through these games for a couple of hours, try to figure out like, okay, what is my kid gonna learn? Is there anything dangerous in this? Is it addictive? Blah, blah, blah. And then like my dad, like, how can I help him with certain things? And so, it might be something interesting, perhaps to consider. I'm not sure, but like I know as a parent, like in a son, I struggle with trying to advocate certain types of games that will give certain types of benefits. But I'd be interested in connecting with you offline about that.
Okay.
But Bilal.
Actually, about that, so that is an area of interest I'm looking at. So long story short, I did a presentation on video game addiction and presented to a few psychiatrists, and one of them gave me a clinical research article to work on. And one of the topics I'm interested in isn't precisely addiction, but how different video games are attracted to different communities. We talked about this in some of our earlier episodes, how rhythm games, for example, are really attracted to people who have autism spectrum disorder, right? Because the repetitive nature of those video games really attracts somebody who, for example, who has autism, who likes routine, who likes repetition, right? And so what I do know is that there is a guy, Digital Doc. He is actually introduced me to WarriorGMR. He has this channel called Digital Doc Games where he talks about all things games and health. I would look it up. I have a few videos of there on my own that I helped make with him. And he had this project in mind to make a game library of sorts, like a book club where you talk about a game and talk about its benefits and just kind of break it down. It was this project that we talked about, but I don't think we ever started. So I'd like to start that. Well, let's do that. We should do it.
That'd be awesome, like Goodreads, but for video games rather
Yes.
than books. And
Yes.
speaking of books, I love your books behind you, because that's what I was going to ask you. So we talk about Atomic Habits, Jim Quick's Limitless. What books have sort of informed you as you're doing this work?
gosh, I mean, the first one that popped into my mind really is a yoga book. So I spent a number of years studying yoga, meditation, just learning about the mind from an Indian perspective. And yoga is a 3,000+ year old tradition that had more knowledge about the brain and what today's neuroscience is, that MRIs are now proving that ancient yogis knew years ago about our nervous system and our brain. But there are yoga books. There's a book that's called The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Doidge. That's really great. So I enjoy learning about psychology, neuroscience, yoga, tradition, Ayurvedic medicine. Those are all things that I've studied quite a bit of.
Cool. I think us too.
Fantastic.
All of us.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We're right there with you. Joe Dispenza, Deepak Chopra, all of the, yes, I'm very excited.
All right. I have to head out.
Okay.
Bilal, are you gonna take over?
Actually,
or
I
I'm
think
you gotta
I
head
think
out?
this is a good place to stop because
Yeah.
we talked about everything, we put it all together, and I think we left just enough so that when we bring you on next time, which we will, or we're gonna have a lot more to talk about.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on. Really
Thank you so
appreciate it.
much.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
Kristin.
much. It's been
And
great.
I hope that I can see you in a race, in the future sometime. Maybe we can do a savage race or a 5K or something like that.
That would be great.
All
That
right.
would be great. Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
And that's a wrap.
Thank you.
Warrior Gamer Headquarters Podcast. Out.